Good evening, everyone. Apologies for the delay in starting the public meeting. I would like to call the Committee of the Whole public meeting for December 10th, 2024 to order. I would like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on unceded Algonquin homelands. I would like to acknowledge and thank the Algonquin nations for their stewardship of these lands. I would now like to ask if anyone has an interest to declare to please do so now. All right, I am seeing none, so I will now call for a mover to approve the agenda. Trustee Kaplan-Murth. Does anyone have any changes or additions to the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. Moving on to the briefing from the Chair of the Board. Chair Scott, can you please provide your briefing?
Good evening. The OCDSB is committed to providing a workplace in which all individuals are treated with respect and dignity and work in an environment that is free of workplace harassment, bullying, and disrespectful behavior. We are updating our respectful workplace policy, and we want to hear what you think. The deadline for commenting is this Thursday, December the 12th. You can learn more and provide your thoughts by visiting our online consultation platform, engage.ocdsb.ca. Secondly, if you're a high school student looking to boost your French skills this summer, check out the Explore French summer program. It's a 3 to 5 week immersive experience where you'll build language skills, enjoy French cultural activities, and connect with other students from across Canada. Join our virtual information session tomorrow night, Wednesday, December the 11th at 7 p.m. Details are available on our website. And I also have a reminder for school councils. Applications for a Parents Reaching Out or PRO grant are now open. School councils may apply for a grant of up to $750 to support innovative projects and activities to engage parents, caregivers, and guardians while enhancing their capabilities in various areas. The deadline to apply is January 10th. Details have been emailed to school councils and also shared in our recent parent and caregiver updates. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chair Scott, for your briefing. Are there any questions for the chair at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to the briefing from the director. Director, can you please provide your briefing?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, everyone. At the OCDSB, we're dedicated to helping every student develop strong skills in mathematics. That's why we've created a new resource called Math at OCDSB, packed with tips, tools, and websites to support student learning at home. The first issue was shared in our last parent and caregiver update. From early childhood educators to elementary and secondary teachers, the OCDSB is fortunate to have so many outstanding and innovative educators helping students engage in learning. You can now nominate your favorite educator for the 2025 Prime Minister's Awards. The deadline is January 15th, 2025. Check out our last parent and caregiver update for more information. Finally, a reminder that starting this month, the OCDSB secondary schools will be hosting in-person information sessions for students and their families. This is a great opportunity to explore the school, tour the facility, and meet the wonderful staff members present. For more details, please visit our website at ocdsb.ca. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director. Are there any questions for the Director at this time? Seeing none, we have no delegations this evening, so I will now call upon the Director to introduce Report 24-124 Facilities Renewal Program and School Condition Improvement Project Plan for 2024-2025.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, a huge thanks to our Manager, Dan Bradley, who will provide an overview of the Facilities Renewal Program and School Condition Improvement for the current school year. Thanks. Over to you, Dan.
Thank you, Director, and through you, Chair. Report 24-124, the Facilities Renewal Program and School Condition Improvement Program is seeking budget approval for this year's annual renewal plan. As per previous years, the plan includes hundreds of projects, approximately 500 across over 100 sites. in a variety of disciplines, including roofing, mechanical, HVAC upgrades, lighting and electrical, site work, and playground improvements. This year's budget consists of funding from school renewal allocation of about 15 million and the school condition improvement funding of about 48 million, plus the carry forwards from previous years. Total budget for this year's plan is approximately 105 million. We continue to increase our annual investment accessibility project, accessibility with this year's budget over $10 million, which includes 2 new elevator upgrades, new elevators at Hillcrest and Brookfield. The existing science lab modernization program and learning commons modernization program continues. We've been doing some analysis of those programs over this year, and we'll be sharing very soon a 5-year plan for those programs. Next slide, please. This slide covers the spread of projects for this year's plan. You see accessibility around 11.7, electrical 12.5, interior upgrades, which include science lab renovations of 21 million. Mechanical has seen a significant jump this year with, we're adding a lot of HVAC upgrades across the district, including air conditioning. Roofing's 10 million, site paving 10 million. Our solar photovoltaic program is, we continue to invest in that at 3.3 million this year. Windows 2.9 and contingency about 5.3, which totals 105 million. Next slide, please. Couple special initiatives we're working on, as mentioned, solar photovoltaic systems. We have about 3.5 megawatts of solar systems across the district with 500 kilowatts currently under construction. That's to help with our electrification of our systems across the district and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. As we undertake major renewal projects in the HVAC, we look and see if we can incorporate electrification, removing gas-fired appliances from our system. To offset some of those cost increases, we see if we can install solar photovoltaic systems across the district. Typically in a given year, there are numerous sites on the plan, and after investigation, a couple of those sites typically fall off due to structural restrictions. One topic of discussion, play structure replacement program. Over the years, we've seen the program is a blend between, supported by the board and parent councils from an investment standpoint. What we have been finding over the last couple of years is the cost increase for play structure replacement has increased substantially. So some of the schools across the district have a difficult time raising those substantial amount of funds to support the play structure replacement. Pre-COVID, a senior structure was in the neighborhood of around 60 to 70,000, maybe a little more. Now we're seeing those costs of about 125,000. The city still provides about a $7,500 grant, but the distance between what parent councils can raise versus what the board has to invest is just getting too large. So we decided that we have an inventory of all our structures across the district. We put in place a long-term plan to replace those, with about 5 or 6 being replaced annually. There will be a lot of questions with this. We have reached out or have talked to a few parent councils that have questions. As we kind of dove into the program, it has brought up more questions about, are we providing structures at every site? Those sites only have one. Are we going to provide another one? New schools, historically, we've provided a kinder site, a kinder structure. Are we going to provide a kinder and senior at every new school? Those sites that don't only have, say, a playground or a senior structure, we're going to add another structure. And so there's still a lot of details that we're going through, and I understand there's going to be a lot of questions with this. So with staff, we're going to prepare a memo that will go out to trustees so you can address those questions with the parent councils. So as we've kind of dove into it, there have been a lot of questions that come up. The simple part of replacing, the replacement plan is very straightforward. We have the age, we have the condition of all our structures now. So we can't put on paper when we think we're going to replace them or we know we're going to replace them. But those questions about additional structures, can we accelerate the replacement? Can we add more? Can we add to the structure? The plan is to standardize the structures across the district. And that way we have an idea on costs, and that way we're providing an equitable approach across the district. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, staff. So I will start a speakers list. I'm looking around the room. Trustee Lara.
All right. Couple of questions. First of all, can we make this a recorded vote? All right. Second thing, when you're talking about parent councils have historically raised funds for schools, is it the intention of the district moving forward to preclude parent councils from raising funds for play structures?
Through you, Chair. So that is the intent right now. Again, we are looking at all facets of this program. We are in the infancy of it. But right now we are not asking parent council to provide funding for play structure replacement.
So for greater clarity, we are preventing them from spending school-generated funds on amenities for the schoolyard?
Through you, Chair. No, we're not preventing them from doing that. We're just looking at creating a replacement program for existing structures. We're still determining the details of how we're going to implement that and what the parent councils can invest in when it comes to play structures or playground upgrades.
Okay. On another topic, I'm really glad to see the investment in heat pumps. I saw somewhere in the report it was a 50% reduction in GHG at the sites that we've managed to use heat pump technology, and that is a staggering positive number. When it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, I often see numbers that are like 3 to 5, maybe 8% on a good day. A 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions at our new sites is stellar. I was happy to see the photovoltaics. I'm happy to see that the report has talked about our commitment to meeting the Ontario Access for Ontarians with Disabilities Act and making sure that we got a report done in 22 and that we're going to work on meeting those as we move forward. So all in all, I'm very glad to see that the feedback that has been provided over the last number of years has begun to really be adopted. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Trustee Lyra. Going down my speakers list. Trustee Kaplan-Murth. Oh, sorry, apologies, Trustee Nash. My apologies, everyone.
Apologies accepted. Yes, and through you, Chair. I want to come back to the play structure replacement program and the importance of getting that communication very quickly, because I know of two of my parent councils that are having these discussions, because as you know, they're looking towards spring and are having these discussions about play structure replacement. And so again, I would stress that that communication to go out ASAP.
Through you, Chair. Yeah. Yes, we agree. We do have for next summer, those legacy projects that were in the works for next year are still planning to be replaced next year. So I understand that there is an urgency to get this out because it is a significant change to how we do business. But those projects that were underway, we are going to continue with those.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Nash. I have Trustee Scott, then Trustee Kaplan-Murth. Trustee Scott.
Thank you. I was happy to see the information about the play structure, but I do have some questions about it, particularly in terms of the idea of standardizing the play structures, because the sites are different, the local needs may be different. And the other question is whether any consideration has been given, rather than having a single play structure, to using the schoolyard for a set of smaller installations to support particular kinds of activities, sort of doing the components piece where you have components that are separated that students can use differently. I think we are very reliant on the concept of a traditional play structure. I think it's time we got away from that and started to open the door to more imaginative play.
Through you, Chair. Appreciate the feedback. Yeah, we're willing to look at any different types of ideas and approaches. We were just, the initial steps of this program were to determine our inventory, where we sit in that replacement program, and try to avoid any of those premature failures or instances where a structure does fail and they don't have a structure for some time. So that was kind of the starting point of this program. So there are, and like I said, it's not as simple as just replacement. There are sites that do have individual pieces that don't fall into that specific single play structure program. So we do have to look at those. So there is, as I said, as we've kind of dove into this, it has gotten a bit more complex. So we do need to look at all those details. So we have inventoried everything now. We have a plan, 5-year plan for those replacements, but we do have to look at those details and answer those questions. So I'm hoping to have that information come out with the memo.
Thank you. And I had a second question regarding the proposed shift towards higher use of electricity, given that at the moment, that seems to be the more cost-effective energy option available to us. I just wonder if you have done some analysis of the expected development of changes in fuel costs and energy costs over the coming years, so that we don't get locked entirely into an electric system only to discover that all of a sudden electricity prices skyrocket and gas prices fall to something very low. That kind of inversion has happened in the past, and every time you do your calculations of the long-term operating costs, I think it's important to include consideration of the fluctuations of the prices of different kinds of energy over time relative to each other.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, there's certainly an analysis that goes on in every project we do and look at the systems. And I do agree with you that the fluctuating prices of electricity and gas do play an important role in the systems that we do put in. Which is a reason why when we're upgrading systems and buildings, we don't necessarily just replace a boiler system with an electric boiler. We look at if we can incorporate heat pumps, and we look at if we can incorporate into that building solar photovoltaic to offset those costs. We are very aware of the fluctuating prices, and it's something we do look at. Right now, electricity and gas prices are nearing an equal, but that could change next year. Natural gas certainly is a more economical way to heat right now. Our electricity costs for the district are about 12 million, and our natural gas is about 5. Now, with that being said, the electricity does cover other things, like lights and running pumps and that, so it's not necessarily linear. If we were to transfer all of our natural gas heating to electricity, it'd probably double in cost, so our $5 million budget would probably go to 10 to 12 million. So we do look at all those factors. So it's a balance of sustainability with fiscal responsibility, because their budgets aren't infinite, as you're aware. So we do look at that closely on all the projects we do. It's a case-by-case basis with each site. They're all unique.
Thank you. I have one more question, but I would rather come back on the list, please.
All right, we will put you on second time speakers list. Continuing down my speakers list, Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. My question pertains to accessibility, and this ties into other conversations in terms of accessibility for students with disabilities in some of our schools. And I'm wondering, because the report notes that in 2022, there was an audit of our facilities in terms of whether or not we are meeting the Ontarians with Disabilities Act requirements for accessibility. But I know that, for example, Lisgar High School and others, especially downtown, any of the older schools, there are schools that are still not accessible. So how are we going to prioritize that? Not just on new builds, but on our older buildings.
Through you, Chair. So yeah, it's complex. We certainly are reactionary in a lot of situations when it comes to accessibility, and we tend to follow students through the system if there's say an elevator required. New builds, as you mentioned, do need to meet the new building codes so they're accessible. We do have a variety of vintages of buildings, and some of them are just very difficult to bring up to current accessibility standards. So where we can, we do try to implement physical changes. The audit that we had done in 2022 was to give us a broad overview of kind of this current status of the system, and we've tried to upgrade all the areas we can, the low-hanging fruit as far as opening doorways and that. But some of our facilities will require significant investment in order to bring them up, and it not necessarily cost prohibitive, but it requires significant investment to do so. So we are planning long-term to try to upgrade where we can, all inclusive washrooms. As you see, there's 2 elevators going in this year, so where we can, but some of the buildings are extremely challenging to meet all the requirements for physical accessibility.
Thank you. So I understand that we are reactionary, but I know that there are situations in which students, if they have acute disabilities, let alone chronic disabilities, are not able to attend some of our schools downtown. So then what do we do to meet their needs if they cannot physically get into the building or get into classrooms?
Through you, chairs, so you're asking if students can't get into certain spaces or certain classrooms, we would have to deal with those on a case-by-case basis. We do everything we can to accommodate students that physically can't get into spaces, but there are certain areas across the district that just aren't physically possible without significant investment. So it's hard to answer with just kind of a broad answer to that question, but we do try to react as best possible.
Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, before you continue, the director would also like to respond.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, just adding to General Manager Bradley's comments, I agree wholeheartedly. There are times when we, on a case-by-case basis, adapt. We shift classrooms to be on a main floor, not a second floor, to accommodate for students when we're don't have the facility to match that. So there are cases where we do make some of the adaptations. I think that Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, you're getting to in that particular instance. So there are adaptations made on site that might not all be facilities related, that try to meet the best meet the needs of our students.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So I'm just wondering though, because I understand it's a huge investment in terms of updating those facilities, but if we could have an update perhaps for 2024, or maybe we could have it in 2025, to look at that audit of facilities and which physical barriers have we actually addressed and reduced, that would be helpful so that we can see if we're making progress.
Right, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Murphy, and the director has indicated that that can be integrated into the next report or a future report. Continuing down my first-time speakers list, Stephen, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the presenter. Do you know the average time frame that a traditional play structure is open in a schoolyard?
Through you, Chair, season-wise, I off the top of my head, no, but approximately from May till October.
So that's roughly half the year it's open and half the year it's closed. So I know that in winter, from a supervision perspective, it is more challenging, obviously, because the yards are more densely populated with students. And so I wonder if there's a vision to all-round schoolyards where, you know, the types of activities are there throughout the year. They may change in the winter, obviously, but all areas of the playgrounds are available for students.
Through you, Chair, I mean, certainly we can have those discussions. The plan, again, was generated based on need and based on creating a long-term plan for replacement. But if there's a shift in approach and a shift in how we want to see our playgrounds operating, that's certainly up for discussion. Again, this is a 30-year plan that we have for structures. So, I mean, if not this year or next year, there's a change in approach. We're open and we're able to implement anything that we want to. So.
All right, thank you, and I'm getting indication. All right, are there any other first-time speakers? Seeing none, then I'm going to ask Trustee Nash, do you mind taking the chair, please, as I have a few questions?
Yes, please proceed.
All right, thank you very much. So I have a couple of what I'm hoping is going to be quick questions, and I apologize if I missed it because I do know that Trustee Lara did raise the question just now, but in the report on page 6 under the greenhouse gas emissions, is the 2 to 3% reduction per site or across the district?
Through you, Chair, the reductions across the district, you could see a 0% reduction in one building and a 40% reduction in other based on if we replace gas-fired equipment with heat pumps. So that 2 to 3 is across the district.
Okay, perfect. So my follow-up to that is, have we been achieving this reduction every year?
Through chair, yeah, we have been achieved through COVID. Obviously, there was some anomalies. There was a sharp increase because we weren't occupying the buildings. And then as we reoccupied, we saw a significant increase in ventilation, which caused a use of energy. So that skewed numbers. But now that we're out of that, it's balanced off, and we are seeing 2 to 3% annually.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for answering the questions. I'm now going to switch gears and talk about the play structures as well. So just to clarify, I'm hearing that we don't know when all of our play structures are coming up for renewal right now. Like, we can't say if they're coming up in 10 years, like the remaining ones. We don't know that. Is that correct?
Through chair, no, we do.
Okay.
We have an inventory of all our structures and their condition, and we put in place a long-term plan, and that's going to be something that I share within the memo. We've tagged about a 30-year lifespan to the structures, and so that allows us to come up with a long-term plan.
Okay, and that information is going to be included in the memo, is what you
Correct.
said? Okay.
Correct.
And then my other question is, so this is going to be a change for quite a few parent councils. Is there going to be a communications plan or strategy on how we're going to communicate this outside of just the trustees? Because this will be a change, and I feel like superintendents are also going to get quite a few questions. So is there a communications plan? And I don't know who wants to answer that.
Through you, Chair, I can attempt to. Yeah, there will be communication, but we've already addressed probably half a dozen parent councils on this topic. I've sat down with a couple, and it's generally well received. But there will be a plan put in place to answer those questions, probably an FAQ. Again, we're just in the infancy of it, and as we kind of dig in a little more, we're uncovering more challenges, logistical challenges. So we'll put that all together in the memo.
All right, and then I have one more question. In Appendix B, attached to the report, we list various sites as a line item in our expenditures in numerous areas. This is more of a suggestion, I will say, but it would be really great. I understand that this might be a bit more labor intensive if we could list out each site so we as trustees can point to the community where we are spending our money. Saying various sites across the district makes it look, it's harder to say where we are spending our money. So if we could list out where we do list various sites, if we could list every single one so that we can always point to where it is in the report, that would be appreciated. That's a comment. If staff want to respond, they can, but I have no further comments.
Oh, I'm giving you back the chair.
All right, thank you. Just to confirm, would staff like to comment before I continue?
Through Chair, sure. Various sites, typically we put a budget holder for those projects that come up that we're not aware of. So we do, if you see those various sites, typically the budget isn't very large in comparison to some of the other programs, but we can, where we can identify the projects, we do, because our reporting requirements back to the ministry are very detailed. So those are basically placeholders in the event that something comes up through the year.
Great. Thank you very much, staff. I'm going to continue down my second time speakers list. So I have Trustee Lara, and then I'm going to do Trustee Scott.
Thanks. I was kind of hoping someone else would talk about the fact that we have an $882 million backlog of our permanent learning facilities. That is almost $1 billion of work that needs to be done in our schools to bring them back up to snuff. And I'm really disappointed in this being the 6th year I have sat here, and it has grown from $600 million when I was first elected to $882 million now. And I really sort of am disappointed that this number keeps growing. I think everyone around this table believes that our students, our children deserve the best when it comes to the sites that we send them to spend 8 hours or 6 hours a day. And I am not blaming staff for the fact that this number has grown year over year over year, but I do want to express my disappointment that we are now almost $900 million in facilities that need to be updated and are not being because we don't have the funds. On that, I did have a question about what the backlog on administrative sites is, because notably that number does not include other buildings that we have that are not currently being used as learning sites, but that do represent capital investments that will need to be made lest the roof fall down. So I guess I'm wondering, how much do we owe on the other sites in addition to the 882?
Director first and then.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, I'll start just on a comment and then I will turn it over to our General Manager of Facilities for additional comment. One piece I just want to point out, and I understand the trustee will realize this, as the board will as well, that some of the it's not a level playing field in terms of some of the parameters. Building codes change, upgrades happen on a number of fronts, so that the dollar amount is relative to changes that are expected as new standards for building. And I know our general manager can speak more specifically. Washrooms is one good example, but there are a number of others that make that dollar figure one that ebbs and flows over time. So I just wanted to point that out because I do really credit our facilities department, our general manager, our associate director of business for the amazing work that takes place year in and year out. When it comes to administrative buildings, it's a greater challenge for the district as a number of the funding sources don't apply to administrative buildings, which puts us in a challenge, and we have to be ever more resourceful on that front. Again, I'll turn it over to the general manager, but I do want to point out the piece around the budgetary amount that at times does grow, and it's something we're trying to keep up to as an organization and working diligently at it.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, the number identified in the backlog that represents a 5-year window for high and urgent need items. And that's constantly changing because for a couple of reasons. They do an assessment on an annual basis of about 32 sites. So over the 5-year period, they do all of our sites, which changes the information within our database and is going to change that number. Because it's a 5-year window, and that 6th year, even though say we invest 100 million this year, that 6th year could bring in $200 million of backlog. So that number is constantly changing, and it isn't necessarily a representation of the condition of our buildings. It's identified as the estimated renewal cost if we were to upgrade all those systems based on a specific lifespan that's allocated to all those items within the database. So is the actual need that high? Probably not, but I understand what you're saying. We continue to significantly invest, but that number doesn't seem to change over time. And as far as the backlog number for administration buildings, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it's something I could get. I'd have to see if it is calculated within the database as well.
Thanks. I guess the reason I wanted to highlight this is that a huge number of our schools were built in the 60s in response to the baby boom. And those sites were built with a 50 to 70-year lifespan. And we are hitting the end of that lifespan. And I think we're going to start to see a lot of significant repairs needed in a lot of our sites. And I think we as a board need to start to consider advocacy on this issue when it comes to provincial funding. There are rules about how we cannot spend operational funds on capital and we can't spend capital funds on operational. And if this deficit continues to grow, I think we're going to see financial pressure grow in the near future, particularly as that old expression is an ounce of prevention is cheaper than a pound of cure. And so I can't imagine us not doing preventative measures or preventative maintenance that then results in a much more significant cost because we weren't able to afford the interim work. So all of that to say, this number is worrisome to me, and I think we as a board might wish to have a conversation about advocacy around that issue. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Trustee Lara. Trustee Scott?
Thank you. The first question I have relates to Appendix B, and it's a very specific one. In the second block of entries for mechanical air conditioning total, you note Shingwakon's public school for BAS recommissioning. I was surprised to see anything for that school since it's only been open for a year and a half, basically.
Through your chair, I'll have to do some investigation into that one, Trustee Scott, because I agree with you. It's only been open for a couple of years. So I'll take that back and I'll respond.
Thank you very much. And the other thing I just wanted to add on to the comments from our OCDSB representative in terms of the amount of time that students are able to use play structures in the course of a year. There are certainly safety issues that we need to be aware of. I think we also need to consider safety in terms of the need for students to have the opportunities to experience a certain amount of risk. We have to have limited risk, but understanding how to manage risk is part of child development. And the other thing is that I'm sure there are a host of things we could be looking at and thinking about in terms of our schoolyards that could in fact make them 100% usable on a year-round basis. So just those things I think need to be considered as part of that play structure development of the approach for 30 years. Thank you.
Would staff like to respond?
Through Chair, no, the comments are well taken, and we will review. Again, we were just looking at implementing a plan that's manageable, but I know that there are changes. We are incorporating additional outdoor classrooms and spaces. Parent councils are investing in those classrooms and shade structures and other items. So we are reviewing things, but it certainly warrants additional discussion for sure.
I see no other hands, and I'm going to remind everyone that this is a matter for action and we need a motion on the floor to move the recommendation. So Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
I will put that motion on the floor to move the recommendation.
Great, thank you very much. Trustee Kaplan-Murth, are there any additional speakers to the motion on the floor? Seeing none, so it has been asked that we have a roll call or a recorded vote for this. So if everyone can open their eScribe. If you are having trouble accessing it, then we can just do a verbal vote for those of you who might be having trouble accessing. So it should be appearing in your eScribe momentarily. We apologize. It did not appear correctly, so we're going to have to redo the vote. So sorry. We're going to do a roll call. So I'm going to ask the manager of board services to please do a roll call.
Trustee Dixon.
Yes.
Trustee Evans.
In favor?
Trustee Forte.
In favor.
Trustee Jennings.
In favor.
Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
In favor.
Trustee Bilburn.
In favor.
Trustee Nash.
In favor.
Trustee Presley.
In favor.
And Trustee Scott.
In favor.
So that carries 9 in favor.
9 in favor and 4 absent, so that does carry. All right, thank you everyone for the good discussion. We will be moving on to item 9, reports from statutory and other committees. Item 9.1, I will now call for a mover to receive the report of the Advisory Committee on Equity dated May 30th, 2024. Trustee Forte, are there any errors or omissions to this report? Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So I'm not sure how to flag this as an error, omission, or as just something that maybe we need to consider. but on page 6 of the ACE meeting minutes from May 30th, there is a quote of Ms. Grover suggesting that I have an agenda. And given that this is a historical document, perhaps it's fair for that to reflect that. However, it's a discriminatory comment. It's a specifically anti-Semitic comment. And so my question to the board is, and to Cal and to the committee, is because if we actually flip to future meeting minutes and look at past meeting minutes, there isn't that level of detail. On September 26th, there's no record of what David Sachs said on behalf of the Jewish Federation of Ottawa. And there's no record of what other community members raised as discrimination at that a future meeting. So what do we do? And I don't know what the answer is, but it is a discriminatory comment about me as a trustee, and it should just be noted.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Meier. This is duly noted. I'm gonna call a 30-second recess because the director and the executive officer and I just need to have a quick conversation about what the next steps are. So minute, I'm gonna say for safety's sake, 1 minute recess. If anyone needs to run to the washroom, this would be the time to do it. So with the comments that have been flagged, we are going to bring the meeting minutes back to the committee amongst discussion with the director, chair, and the executive officer. And then we're gonna, so we're gonna pull the minutes, bring them back to the committee, and then we will see them at a later date. Okay. Trustee Lauer, they've been pulled off the agenda.
Do you want me to make my comments the next time they come back then?
Yes.
Okay. So
Okay.
then we'll have to revise them again.
Can you, they're going to be pulled off, they're going to be sent back to the committee. Can you provide your comments to the staff so that we can amend the minutes and then bring them back to the committee and then bring them back here?
My question is, are these even minutes? I don't know if we had quorum for that meeting.
Who from staff would like to answer?
3 people is quorum?
Trustee Lara, so they're going to be, so the concern has also been noted. We are going to bring it back to committee and we are going to go, we will bring them back to committee and they will be back in front board at another time. All right, moving on. Trustees, we're going to move on to the next agenda item. I will now call for a mover to receive the report of the Advisory Committee on Equity dated September 26, 2024. Trustee Presley, are there any errors or omissions? Trustee Kaplan-Meier?
Thank you, through you. So the omission on September 26 is there's no record of David Sachs speaking on behalf of Jewish Federation of Ottawa about the Jewish community's experiences of capital pride. in the community space notes. So again, I ask what detail should be included and what should not be included, but that's conspicuously absent, as is conversation from community raising concerns about intimidation at that meeting.
All right, thank you, trustee Kaplan-Meier. So these minutes are going to go back to staff and back to the committee and then be sent back here. All right, moving on. So item 9.3, the Special Education Advisory Committee dated October 9th, 2024. I am looking for a mover. Trustee Kaplan-Meier. Are there any errors or omissions to this report? Trustee Scott.
Thank you. Item 5.1 in the report suggests that I requested that trustees Blackburn and Nash be listed as non-voting members or something. The way it is, I think they had been listed as non-voting members and they were actually guests. And I had asked for them to be put into the correct place, but the rendition here got it backwards.
Okay, so we can take that under advisement and we will have them edited for the board meeting. Are there any other errors or omissions?
That's it.
All right, I am seeing none, so I will now call the vote to receive the report pending the changes that trustee Scott has phrased. So all those in favor? And that carries. I am now going to call for a mover to receive the report of the Parent Involvement Committee dated October 16th, 2024. Trustee Nash. Are there any errors or omissions to this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. I am now going to call for a mover to receive the report of the Indigenous Education Council dated October 17th, 2024. Trustee Forti, are there any errors or omissions to this report? Trustee Scott.
I believe there is an error. I believe Kyle Morrison, who's listed as a member, is actually there, attends as a staff person.
All right, thank you, Trustee Scott. Pending those changes, are there any other errors or omissions? Seeing none, I will now call the vote to receive the report. All those in favor? And that carries. I will now call for a mover to receive the report of the Advisory Committee on Equity dated October 24th, 2024. Trustee Nash, are there any errors or omissions to this report? Seeing none, I will now call the vote to receive the report. All those in favor? And that carries. I will now call for a mover to receive the report of the Special Education Advisory Committee dated November 6th, 2024. Trustee Scott, are there any errors or omissions to this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that carries. I will now call for a mover to receive the report of the Audit Committee dated November 25th, 2024. Trustee Jenkins, are there any errors or omissions in this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that was carried. So there are action items that are underneath these minutes. So the first motion was approved by the board at the meeting of November 26, 2024. I am now going to look for a substitute mover for the chair of the audit committee to read the recommendation. Trustee Lyra.
I will move that Appendix A to Report 24-131 be approved as the 2023-2024 Annual Report on Internal Audit Activity.
All right, thank you, Trustee Lyra. I will now call for a vote for the recommendation that is on screen. All those in favor? And that carries. I will now move on to item 9.8C. So I'm going to look for a substitute mover for for the chair of the audit committee to read the recommendation on the screen. Trustee Scott, can you read the recommendation on the screen, please? Trustee Scott.
That report 24-132 be approved as the audit committee annual report to the board for 2023-2024.
All right, thank you, Trustee Scott. I will now call for a vote for the recommendation. All those in favor? And that carries. All right, thank you, everyone. We're going to now move on to the matters for discussion. I will now call upon the director to introduce report 24-125, International Education Initiatives and Programs in the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, as Superintendent Amy Hanna and Executive Director of OCDSB Geoff Best settle in, the purpose of this report is to provide the Board of Trustees with an overview of the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board's international education initiatives, which are provided in collaboration with our OCDSB, the Ottawa-Carleton Education Network. And I will turn it over to our Superintendent and Executive Director.
Thank you, and good evening through you, Chair. I'm very pleased to be here tonight to present this information and report to you about the different international education initiatives and programs that we are leading here in the district in partnership with the OCNet. So just to start us off, we have some slides to go through, but it's really an opportunity to celebrate all the wonderful initiatives that have been happening for a very long time in our organization and in our national capital region. And I will say, as a capital city in our country, an international city in our country, this work is so important because it really provides that opportunity for students to be able to have that opportunity to engage in intercultural understanding, grow those cultural competencies, have high academic rigor, and really become those individuals that are self-reflective and looking at the world and being those global citizens nationally and internationally. Next slide, please. So to give a bit of context, international education in Ontario is a ministry directive and provides an overview to us with a strategy that was created back in 2015 related to how school districts are to be moving forward this work. And really the focus of the work was to ensure that the students and our staff were equipped with the necessary skills and knowledge to thrive in a globalized world. And so there is a strategy that was created, and also there is a review of the strategy that is currently underway. And very pleased to share that Geoff and team at OCNet have been invited to be part of that review to ensure that the renewed vision incorporates the realities of today and the work that we're leading. Next slide, please. Wanted to concretely show the deep intersection and connection to the work of the OCDSB strategic plan and how it aligns beautifully with the work that we are trying to move forward. First and foremost, of course, with our exit outcomes, we've got those characteristics of collaborative, globally aware, innovative, and creative. We've got those skills that we are always honing: digitally fluent, academically diverse, effective communicators, critical thinkers, and ethical decision makers. And all of those relate so beautifully to the pillars of the strategic plan: learning, well-being, where we're really providing and improving cross-cultural communication, critical thinking skills, cultivating acceptance and understanding, and really honing that character development piece where we're working on those character attributes, authentic tasks, language acquisition opportunities. A lot of these exchanges provide rich opportunities for us to not only learn from and with other cultures, but those languages, the languages that come with them as well. Also the culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, ensuring that the students' identities and experiences are woven into their learning, and diversifying those learning experiences to meet the students' needs. And lastly, of course, we have that social responsibility component where we are really providing those opportunities to work through the competencies, build those executive functioning and social emotional skills, and doing so by learning with and from others. And the values that we hold for leadership development. Work is not only to support students, but it is for staff. So having those rich opportunities for staff to be engaging with other individuals, colleagues globally, to learn from them and to hone skills, but also to look at different pedagogies to really ensure that we are providing the most rich and current and most effective way to reach our students. And of course, equity, inclusion, accessibility is always at the core of this work. Next slide, please. So I'll turn it over to Geoff.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to talk to you a little bit about OCNet. OCNet is really a unique part of what we do at the OCDSB. It's an independent corporation, but its focus is entirely on enhancing OCDSB programs and supporting international initiatives. One of the key ways OCNet makes an impact is by building partnerships around the world. These partnerships don't just benefit international students, they provide direct financial assistance to help to make international opportunities accessible to our schools and students. Closer to home, OCNet strengthens local connections among teachers and schools here in Ottawa. It helps create a bridge for international exchanges, gives our students and teachers the chance to connect with peers from all over the world, learn from new perspectives, and bring those experiences back to our classrooms. So in many ways, OCNet isn't just about global engagement, it's about making sure those global experiences enrich our local communities too. Next slide, please. This slide gives an overview of the impact OCNet student programs have had this year and highlights a few key initiatives. First, let's talk numbers. This year, we've welcomed 572 international students from 48 countries into our schools. These students are spread across 21 secondary schools and 32 elementary schools, creating a rich cultural tapestry that enhances the learning environment for everyone. For our own OCDSB students, student exchange programs offer both short-term and long-term opportunities to study abroad. These partnerships with international districts and schools allow students to experience life in another country, gain new perspectives, and bring those insights back to our community. Finally, the International Certificate Program continues to thrive with over 750 secondary students enrolled. It's inspiring to see the growing interest in global citizenship. This year, we're projecting a graduating cohort of 238 students in June 2025, each of whom will leave with enhanced understanding of the world and their place in it. Together, these programs are a testament to how OCNet is creating transformative opportunities for both local and international students. Next slide, please. This map provides visual representation of the incredible global diversity we have within our schools. This year, OCNet welcomed students from 48 different countries, each bringing unique cultures, languages, and perspectives to our classrooms. This diversity creates an amazing opportunity for our local students to engage globally without even leaving Ottawa. They're interacting daily with peers from all over the world, building cross-cultural understanding, breaking down barriers, and gaining valuable global competencies that will serve them throughout their lives. It's this type of environment, one that celebrates and fosters diversity, that truly prepares our students for a world that's increasingly interconnected. Next slide, please. On this slide, you can see our top 10 countries represented among our international students this year. It's interesting to note that these students fall into two main categories: short-term students who join us for up to 1 year, often as part of a cultural exchange or to gain an international experience before returning to their home country, and longer-term students who stay 2 to 3 years. These students typically aim to complete their high school education here and earn an Ontario secondary school diploma, which opens doors to post-secondary opportunities around the world. This mix of short-term and long-term students enriches the cultural fabric of our schools. The short-term students bring fresh perspectives, while the longer-term students often build deeper relationships within the school community, creating lasting impact on their peers and teachers alike. Next slide. This slide highlights some of the incredible partnerships and exchanges that OCNet has established over the years. These partnerships connect our schools, teachers, and students with communities around the globe, fostering cross-cultural learning and collaboration. For example, in France, we have a strong connection with l'Académie d'Aix-Marseille, including cities like Marseille, Nice, and Aix-Provence. In China, we collaborate with the Chengdu Tsinghua Municipal Education Bureau, which has led to meaningful exchanges and learning opportunities. Our partnership with the Jeju School District in South Korea includes student exchanges, teacher training, and even participation in the Jeju International Forum, a global event addressing major global challenges. In Japan, we maintain longstanding relationship with Osaka Gakuge High School and Yamate Gakuen High School in Yokohama, where reciprocal cultural exchanges enrich students' learning. In Italy, we work with Ufficio Scolastico Regionale per Emilia-Romagna in Bologna. Did I get that right? Connecting educators and students through innovative exchanges. And in Taiwan, our collaboration with the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office has opened doors to unique cultural and educational opportunities. These partnerships reflect OCNet's commitment to creating global learning experiences that enrich both our students and educators, as well as the communities we connect with around the world. Next slide. Do you want to do?
So to conclude with some of our comments, we have just really quite hot off the press a video for all of you to see our students in action. So we had the pleasure of sending 16 students back in the month of April on exchange to Chengdu, which is the partnership region that we have been working with in China. And most recently in November for the People to People Exchange Month, our students were able to go as well. So they had students come to us last spring. So our students just have returned actually November 30th, so very recently. So you have a recent video from our partner who has just shared it with us. So you can see a little bit of what the exchange entailed both in April and in November. So Mike, if you could play the video, thank you. Thank you very much. And just to conclude, we are looking forward to future initiatives and opportunities, and some of them include continuing to look for further opportunities for students to have exchange, both short-term, long-term, but also increasing the duration of some of our exchanges for students. That is in Aix-en-Provence or in Marseille with our agreement with our partner in France. Also, we are working diligently with program services to review the accumulation of credits a student can achieve while they are working and doing their exchanges, both short-term and long-term, to provide other opportunities for students on whatever pathway journey that they are on, to have those pieces removed and barriers removed for them. And then lastly, we continue to provide other opportunities for staff to be connecting both virtually and in person, dependent on the location, but really to continue to build and to support how we are serving our students. So thank you very much, and we welcome questions.
Great, thank you very much. It's always wonderful to hear about the work being done at OCNet. I'm sure we're going to have a fruitful discussion. So on my speakers list to start, I have Trustee Lara.
Thanks. So I'm going to start with the part of the report that says that this is cost neutral to the district, or money positive to the district. In the report, it says that international student fees are $15,300, and of that, $1,300 goes to the province, meaning it costs any student who chooses to enroll $14,000, or we get $14,000 of any student who enrolls. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So my question is, given that the GSN funding for every student is more than $13,000, any student who is not providing their own way, and that does not include the partial funding for an EA support or partial funding for principals, partial funding for custodians, any of those like partial funded positions that come in addition to the 13,000. I struggle to see how this is cost neutral to the district if you subtract the should be costs from all of our regular students. So I'm going to start with that.
Through you, Madam Chair, appreciate the question from Trustee Lyra. One of the pieces, and I'll turn it over, of course, to our superintendent and the executive director of OCNet to comment more. One of the things that we look to do as an organization in partnership with OCNet is to place students who arrive with us for short or longer term exchanges in opportunities, be them at the secondary level, at the elementary level, where we actually can complement the existing student body in the school. So there are some schools who are at capacity. They might not be able to receive international students, while other schools were able to leverage the fact that we've got classes in place, course options, sections, whatever it may be, where we are able to complement really the formula we've got to date already and provide students that experience in those sites. So really it's working in tandem that not only the cost neutrality in terms of no cost to the OCDSB, but the monies that come in for those international students are utilized. One of the pieces I will add is through OCNet and some of the funding that we receive annually, we do provide sections to schools such as for ESL to support those students whose English may not be quite at a level that are required there. So there's some additional funding received not only by the district through the partnership with OCNet, but also additional supports for those sites that accept international students. And excuse me, as an example of the secondary level, I think, and I'll stand to be corrected, a dozen of our secondary sites, for instance, would welcome international students, while maybe 16 or 18 others might not, based on the enrollment that takes place. So it does really complement what we have to optimize the offerings we have for all students, our own and those coming from abroad. But I'll turn it over.
Yeah, I guess what we're trying to do is to spread the students out as thinly as possible, if you like, and looking to fill spaces that are empty. So if you were to subtract all of the international students, you probably you would feel a loss of programming and a loss of teachers. What they do bring in to a lot of the schools where there is declining enrollment is they manage to keep those schools going until demographics change. But we do spread them out. I think mentioned the number of schools they're in. There are over 60 schools, so it does lessen the cost of them going in. I don't know that a teacher's going to be, or a section's going to be required for every 3 students coming in.
If we're bringing in 572 international students, assuming they're all in high school or middle school?
Through you, Chair, that was the tally of students that are K to 12 that are coming into the district. So they're distributed amongst elementary and secondary, and there are some primary, middle school, and secondary students.
even if you take the smallest number being, assume they were all grade 1 students, that means that we would have at least 30 extra teachers. And I know they're not all grade 1 students, and that means that there are higher numbers in the classes, but there's a not insignificant number of additional teachers that need to be hired to make sure that we still meet the rest of our quotas when it comes to classroom averages across the district. I would love to see a fuller accounting of this because I appreciate the work that is being done, but I remain unconvinced that this is not costing the district money after all the costs are accounted for.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, of course, OCNet has a board of directors, functions as Executive Director Best mentioned as an independent entity. And of course, members of the board of trustees sit on that board. One of the pieces to share, of course, is that it's not a direct calculation of 572 students and therefore divide that by 20 or 24 as a class average. That, as Executive Director Best had mentioned, a lot of those placements are done to optimize, quite frankly, our existing classes so that we actually round out and fill existing rooms. So it's not a direct equatable that this many students come in divided by 20 or divided by 24.5, and that's how many teachers would be required. And that's what the district's been doing in collaboration with OCNet for years on that front to really, again, optimize the opportunities that we provide. It's not isolated from the existing construct we have as a district at the OCDSB.
Okay. I'm going to move on from the funding. I've got a couple of other questions. One of my questions is related to the decision to use a document from 2015, and I had heard that there's another document coming. That was 3-4 education ministers ago, and they're, let's say, of a different persuasion than they were in 2015. I'm wondering if we have any indication that the current strategy, the one from 2015, is going to align with the updated strategy from the ministry's perspective.
Thank you. And through you, Chair. I didn't note as well that in 2018, there was a Global Education for Ontario Learners. There was another component to the additional strategy. I appreciate the comment through Trustee Lyra. And I'll turn it over to Executive Director Best around the work that he's been invited to participate in.
The current government, yes, you're right, has not paid much attention to that document, but nonetheless, it has been out there, and there's about 36 school districts that are actively engaged in this. And we did, through roundtable discussions, talk about what we wanted to see in that document. And much of what's there still has yet to be done. There's a lot of altruistic hopes and dreams in that document that we're trying to create. And I think what you might be interested to know is that a lot of districts in Canada and in Ontario look to this one as an exemplar for following that document and for creating opportunities for our kids to go out. The problem with looking at international education as an industry is that we're focused on the revenue, which is totally correct, but to be using some of that revenue to create opportunities for our kids to go out. And that's what we've been trying to do, and quite successfully, I think.
I guess my question is, given what the current government has said about international students writ large, I'm wondering if you believe that they're going to continue to have the perspective that they've had over the last 10 years with regards to international students at the K-12 level, or if they're going to start to reel that back.
They haven't so far, and it's been really crickets from the government about international education. I belong to the executive of the Ontario Association for School Districts International, and we do try to lobby the government, and it is very difficult to get them to make a comment one way or the other. So we continue to follow the current strategy until another one is in place. And right now we're trying to get them to refresh this document.
Okay. Perhaps you're reading different news than I. I've seen a lot of news about international students in Ontario and the government's decisions around international students and how maybe we need to rethink our institutions that we are funding with international student dollars. And I'm wondering if you have any insight into that.
That's a post-secondary level. K-12 level is quite different. There's no comment about K-12. They're totally talking about the colleges and universities.
Do they know that?
Trustee Larry.
Okay.
We're
That was-
trying to make
That
you
wasn't
aware of that.
necessarily
Yeah.
sarcastic. I will give you that. I do have another question about accessibility for low-income students.
Trustee Lara, would you like to be
I
added?
would like to go back on the list, yes.
Going down my speakers list, Trustee Kaplan-Murth.
Perfect. Well, thank you. And apropos of, I think what you were going to ask, this is my question. And I think, obviously, I think having international students is very important. But I question the equity and inclusivity of a program that for students who have $15,300 in tuition, they can come to our public schools. But are we actually getting students who would most benefit from that international experience? I'm wondering whether when we have these kids coming over, do they represent the minorities in their countries? Do they represent 2S LGBTQ in their countries? What is the gender disparity in terms of who comes over? And do we ever have any students with disabilities who come over? My guess in answer to those questions is no, or rarely. And so are we actually upholding our own commitment to equity and inclusivity by having a program that brings over only those who are privileged enough to come over? And similarly, for kids who might want to go on trips, how are we really making sure that that's equitable so that students who are low socioeconomic kids can actually go over to France or to Italy or to China or to anywhere else?
Through you, Madam Chair, Trustee Kaplan-Murth, and I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Hanna, who can speak to more details on this. But I think the spirit of what you're getting here in terms of our diversity, our inclusivity, our equity as a strength is part of what we're attempting to do in our renewed vision of the work post-pandemic. You speak to a number of items we're looking to address, and it is a work in progress for us. Some of the memorandums of understanding that we're establishing with countries abroad, and again, both Amy and Joff can speak to this in more detail, look to adjust that so that it's not international education for the top student in the class. Do you know what I mean in that context? That this is a widened opportunity not only for our students. There are a number of initiatives we have in place both within district, but also the partners we work with to provide opportunities so that we have a reasonable cost structure for this, a widened array of students' interest and profiles, backgrounds, opportunities. It is a work in progress, and we're very much trying to address the spirit of what you're speaking to right now. And part of the reason that Executive Director Best mentioned that we're trying to utilize some of this funding that we do make through OCNet to reinvest that to lower the cost for opportunities for a wide array of students. But I'll turn it over to Superintendent Hanna because it's an excellent question and part of what our vision is moving forward.
Thank you very much. And through you, Chair, just to first comment, I think it's important to note that international education doesn't physically always mean individuals moving internationally. We can do so via a variety of ways, namely virtually. So when we talk about different connections that we have within our schools, both elementary and secondary, that are open to all students in our classrooms, our partnerships that we have, these deep partnerships that are listed in the report for you, where we have school to school, class to class, teacher to teacher connections, student to student connections. So I want to be really concrete about that because I think there's an important nuance with that, where all students would have access to that. Also, I know when we're talking about different opportunities and removing barriers for our students to access this work, that is paramount for us. That's part of our strategic plan, how we're offering these opportunities to our students. And that continues to be a work in progress, but we can share that there are a variety of bursaries that students have access through the OCNet that I will turn it over to Executive Director Best to share with you. But also there are other opportunities within schools to be raising money and to be having those opportunities to go should they wish to go abroad. We are looking to build a framework as well for our district whereby students who are still in elementary school, who are plotting with their families, caregivers, and guardians, what their pathway may be down the road might include these opportunities, be it virtual or in person, to have international experiences. And I think once individuals, and I would invite you to look at the International Certificate Program, That doesn't actually require any of our students who you saw and have heard from us tonight. We're going to have over 200 students graduating from this district who will have this designation. Not all of them have left our country. They've engaged in international work, study with other students in different countries. They've done projects. You saw evidence of it in the video. They happened to actually go and be on site. But some of that work was just happening from class to class, from school to school, which is, again, providing that opportunity for our students to be engaging. So that is intended to be really allowing all to be part of it. We do, for our students that are international students, because this is a different arm of the organization. So I think we're talking about a few different things. So I really wanted to delineate between those. That's a different piece. And so I can speak comfortably to the partner organizations that we have with other districts, where students who are coming from those for the exchanges with our students are students that are, involved in international, seeking to have opportunity to continue to engage in expanding their English language learning. So they're tending to want to come and have those experiences here and have those cultural opportunities. And they're engaged through their school systems to be able to access that. In Europe, it would be Erasmus+, other things that students are engaging in, which is their international body in their school districts or in their continents. I'll turn it to Executive Best to talk a little bit about the bursary and maybe international students specifically.
Yes, we established a bursary for our students to apply for through the Education Foundation, and that will help somewhat for students who want to travel abroad. What we're really trying to do is, with these partners, bring down the cost and to look at talking to the schools in terms of developing a strategy so that students don't have to suddenly come up with a lot of money in 1 year. Starting in grade 8, for example, at one of our schools, the students coming in are told about trips that are going to happen in grade 10, 11, 12, and they can start to put money aside. I taught in Japan. I'll get back to our topic in a minute, but when I taught in Japan, every student in grade 12 in every school went to Kyoto, or in some schools would go overseas. But what they did was every parent paid, let's say, $30 a month or whatever the timeline was, but they saved the money over time. They fundraised so that everybody had that opportunity. We can't obviously send everybody abroad, but we can try to make it reduce the cost and show people the way to get there. And by encouraging our students to start thinking about international travel at a young age, and their parents, feel very strongly that more of our students should be going abroad. Not everybody can go abroad. They're not ready to go abroad. There's a lot of students who should not be going abroad right now. It's an experience that we have to value and look at who are going to be allowing to go abroad, I suppose. But in terms of cost, we've tried to make it as equitable as possible. And for the students who are coming here from other countries, LGBTQ, we have all of that in all of the students that are coming over. There's no discrimination. We have host families who are ready to host anybody. So that part of it has been ongoing for many years in terms of racial tension that comes with families who are racist from another country, who are sending their students and they want their children to be in a white family with, the stereotypical Canadian family that's long gone. So those issues are part of what we do. They're part of the whole, our business really is trying to develop those competencies so that our students feel confident to go over and the students coming here feel well received and understood in their classes.
Thank you. So I appreciate that. I just wonder whether you would be able to provide us with data, because bringing down cost isn't really enough for a family who lives at the poverty line. And those are the kids who would most benefit from an opportunity to travel overseas where their families wouldn't otherwise be able to do so. So thinking about children in some of our inner city schools who would not have any other opportunity to travel internationally, but they're not, I don't think, the kids who we're sending. So like I would like to see data on who we're actually sending. On the flip side, the kids who are coming over are still coming from families who have the privilege of raising or putting together $15,000. Those are still families of privilege. And as to Trustee Lyra's comments before, those families are actually getting a great bargain because they would be paying 2 or 3 times that amount if they were sending their kids to a private school. So we're taking kids of privilege and giving them a bargain, and we're not necessarily sending kids who are highest needs here to go overseas. So I think I would like to see just data on who are we actually sending, and more information also on the 48 countries or the other countries. Where are we taking kids from and who are we taking?
Through you, Madam Chair, certainly we can provide some information and memo as a follow-up. And I think Trustee Kaplan-Murphy points well made. It's as Superintendent Hanna and Executive Director Best mentioned, most definitely a continued work in progress for us. I am happy to say and pleased to say that a number of other countries are trying to get to the equity issues that we are as well. So it's something that's a work in progress, not only for us, but also in other countries that we've seen in the evolution of the partnership and the memorandums of understanding with a number of countries. So most definitely a work in progress for all of us. It'll never be perfect, as was shared, but something that we continue to work on.
All right, I'm seeing no additional comment from staff, so we will go to second time speakers list. Trustee Lyra.
Thanks. So Trustee Kaplan-Murphy got several of my questions. I'm going to ask a more specific one. Give me a price. What would it cost one of our families to send one of our students through this program for a full year?
Through you, Chair. So Trustee Lyra, just to be clear, do you mean a student exchange? So we have like a 5-week exchange as an example to our partner in France?
Sure.
Yeah. So for that 5-week, it can be between $2,500 or $3,000 for the duration. And so in the memo or in the report, we talk about the bursary options that students have the ability to apply for. And then some of those students in those high schools also elect to do some fundraising. And then there is sort of other sort of bursaries that can be contemplated as well. So that would be for the duration of the 5 weeks. And then concretely, it's a homestay, right? So you're living with family, and that's the agreement that families are choosing to host the student from France for the 5 weeks and vice versa when their child goes over to that region.
Okay. I'm going to ask a general question of the board. What would it look like if we canceled this program? Would it cost us money? Would it save us money? Would it increase our equity goals? Would it decrease our equity goals? Would it, what would the loss be to the district in terms of cultural enrichment? These are the sorts of questions that I'd like us to sort of have a conversation about, because at this time, I am not convinced that this is not reinforcing the privilege that exists in society and giving members of people of like families with means an opportunity to have their kids travel cheap for 5 weeks. And I don't know if the educational outcomes that those students get justify the costs to the district. I am also still unconvinced that it is truly cost negative to the district to run this program. I think that there are a lot of hidden costs that are not being calculated when it comes to running this program. You mentioned running extra ESL classes. I don't know if that's been accounted for when we decide this is cost positive. So I'd love to, I guess, have a conversation about the equity goals and about the financial goals, and if this program meets the goals it intended to when it was set out, when we set out to run it. So I guess that's a series of questions, mostly for my colleagues, because I know we don't have any additional data coming in the next 30 seconds. So, and this is not a matter for action, it's a matter for discussion and a matter for thinking about. So just sort of think about, is this the kind of program that we want to be spending our resources on, including our senior staff time? I know that we have a limited amount of senior staff and they have a limited amount of time. And I'm sure you're very busy and with things that are not just this program. And so I wonder, is this where we want to be spending our time and attention and money? Thank you.
So through you, Madam Chair, just a comment to Trustee Lyra's comments, all very valid comments. One of the aspects that we strive to do in the partnership with OCNet and the OCDSB is to have a varied opportunities of experiential learning. Not every student wants to travel abroad. Not every student wants to engage in an international certificate program, but some do. There are a number of programs and services we run that really cater to or tailor to the wide variety and the diversity, the strength and diversity of our students. The work that we do, the effort that we put in is to enrich our students, like I would say for any program we do in numeracy, in literacy, or another area of learning that does have, without questions, effort and time of staff that staff does wholeheartedly. I would also say that for a number of our students, and I've had this comment directly, that the ability to reduce costs, as the superintendent and the executive director have shared, is sometimes their only opportunity to travel abroad. That if they were to, even of their own volition, travel to France for 5 weeks, the cost would far exceed the $2,500, $2,600 that Superintendent Hannah spoke to. So I do want the Board of Trustees to understand a greater perspective. We work diligently with all of our students in all of our programs. Not every student engages in every extracurricular. Not every student engages in this. And we are working on many of the items that have been raised as very important issues for us to continue to address as a work in progress. But we're on that, and I'm very inspired by the kind of difference that's been made post-pandemic. But it is, for many of our students, a life-changing opportunity that shapes not only their time in that given year, or semester, or 5-week period, but for their entire lives, some of which is the most highlighted aspects they speak to when they graduate, when I go through and attend the graduation for the ICP program and other graduations. So really great points raised by the Board of Trustees. We're very confident that we're managing the costs of that and have a return coming to the district. The board will see that in the next update to the annual budgetary process, and that we work diligently to make it work for our students and our staff.
All right, thank you, Director. I'm going to hand it back over to Trustee Lyra for her remaining time, and then we do have a speakers list of Trustee Dixon, then Trustee Scott, and then Trustee Nash, and then Trustee Jenkins. Trustee Lyra?
Okay. I appreciate what the director has said about how it's an opportunity for some students who might otherwise really struggle to be able to do so. I guess the crux of my concern is that $2,500 or $3,000 puts this program out of reach for a significant number of families. And the ones who can afford $2,500 or $3,000 are, quite frankly, not the ones that I'm concerned about. And so I understand that there is a bursary, but the amount that the bursary will be able to cover, the number of students the bursary will be able to cover is far exceeded by the number of students who would benefit from this kind of program, whose families cannot afford this kind of program. So that's all. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Trustee Lyra. So Trustee Dixon, then Trustee Scott, then Trustee Nash, then Trustee Jenkins. Trustee Dixon?
Through you, Chair. Hi, Amy. I guess my question would be, from how long you've been doing this, how many students do you find that is turned away from the program compared to the students that apply to do the program? Because I think that when they're going on for lived experience and to learn a language, right? That's going to take them further into whatever studies they would want to continue on in. So I guess when we talk about barriers, do we try to eliminate those barriers when we're looking at the students that are applying to the program to continue studying?
Thank you, Trustee Dixon. And through you, Chair, I think it's important to note that this is really at each school level where students are interested in being a part of this. They initiate that work with staff who are part of this work with the OCNet. And so I think it's also important to have a bit of a reality around the scope. Presently, it's 40 students per year that are eligible to go for the ex-Marseille exchange across the district of all the secondary schools. So it isn't, hundreds of students that are able to do that. So typically it's students who are in French programming in that case, who are looking to continue having opportunities with the French language, with the French culture, which is a part of course, our country. So it sort of hones in on our being a bilingual district as well, where we are, trying to have those opportunities. I think it's also important to note that some of the other opportunities are much shorter. So they are typically 10 school days, maybe 9 school days where they're going and having that taste and experience of going abroad. And so some of those are even less expensive and are fewer students. So students that are interested in being a part of that are often invited through the International Certificate Program. That's where we have those hundreds of students who find out about these opportunities. Students in every high school find out through their guidance department as well. And so those students that are seeking interest at that grade level where they're eligible to attend are exploring that opportunity. Do you want to add to that?
It's difficult to know how many students don't participate because they don't have the money, the means. But I know from attending the graduation ceremonies, and we have the students speak about their experience in the ICP program, and many of them have found scholarship opportunities, ways of going, so they don't have to travel to get the ICP, but some of them want to. And we introduce all of those students to any opportunity that comes from the embassies, from abroad, where it's free travel. Some students have gone to the United States, the Fulbright Scholarship, all paid for by Fulbright. So there are some opportunities for students who don't have the means to go. I guess the challenge is to how do you identify the students who have gone through these programs and how much revenue they had. I was also thinking about the students who come here being from privileged homes. I know many, many parents who I've spoken to about how expensive this is and how this is everything that they have, and they are working in noodle shops in Vietnam and different countries to afford their kids to come. And they can't afford the private schools. The ones with the real means are going to the private schools that are charging $60,000 to $100,000 a year with room and board. So we are good value. We do make opportunities for people around the world to come here who might not have the means, but who are putting their money away, and this is their dream for their child to escape from whatever they feel they're in their own country. But the equity piece is very interesting because you wonder, is it equitable to say nobody can go if not everybody can go? So how to make it I don't think we are turning away a lot of people. There's 40 for France. We're talking about 200 people maybe. And anyone who's come and said, I really want to travel, we're going to make it happen for them, no matter who they are.
Thank you, staff. Trustee Dixon?
Thank you. Through you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Trustee Dixon. Trustee Scott?
Thank you. A couple of questions that I don't think we've really explored yet. The tuition fees for the international students are $15,300, and you can subtract $1,300 out of that. So that's 14,000 basically that stays in Ottawa. But that's not the only cost for these students, is it? Because aren't there also costs in terms of their accommodations while they're here?
Sorry, the total cost with accommodation and fee, medical insurance, about $30,000 or $33,000.
And in terms of the cost of the accommodations, I know that OCNet arranges the accommodations and so on to some extent.
We use a third-party
provider.
Yeah, we work with them very closely, but we are not providing it.
And so is there any part of that additional cost that generates some revenue for OCNet?
No.
So basically the only revenue that comes to OCNet is the 14,000? And in terms of the 14,000, how does that compare to the, basically the average grant per pupil that we receive from the province?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm not sure of the exact amount for this current school year, but on average, it's somewhere between about $12,000 and $14,000, depending on whether or not a student is in French immersion. There's a slightly higher amount for students who are in French immersion than just the base per pupil funding, but it's something in that range, approximately.
But if we just took all of our total grant revenue divided by, subtract the major capital projects, new school construction funding, and divide by the total number of students, I wonder what number we'd actually get. So I don't, because I think we have to look at it in terms of the overall thing, because we know our system does not run all that efficiently. We're continually having to have top-ups for school staffing because the numbers don't work out evenly into tidy 4 classes of 20 students and 6 classes of 24 students and 2 classes of 26 students and everything else. People don't send their kids to our schools in those kinds of batches. And at the secondary level, again, there are limitations within our contracts. So that means that we always have to have a set of contingency staffing so that schools will be able to operate for the number of students they have and still fit the class size regulations and everything else, which takes quite a bit of juggling. So we're not necessarily adding teachers. We may be actually avoiding the need to bring in some of those contingency staff in order to make it work. I think the other thing that is important, and it's something I'm not sure we could put a price on, and that is the value of the experience for the students who are in our schools to meet and get to know students from other countries who are here to learn with them.
Great, thank you, Trustee Scott. If you would like to go back on second time speakers list, please let us know. Director, would you like to comment before we continue down?
Through you, Madam Chair, both two very good points. The qualitative benefit from having a even greater diversity of a student body. And the other one is precisely what the collaboration with OCDSB does. It looks to fill the complement where we have staffing existing, not necessarily new staffing, that actually optimizes what we're able to offer, and to Trustee Scott's point, to actually ensure that we continue to be able to offer that greater array of sections at the secondary level. As an example, that's precisely the kind of planning, and that is why a lot of this work takes place once our staffing is settled, not beforehand, to be able to distribute those international students wisely and for their own benefit across the district. But it is what Trustee Scott is speaking to that optimizes our efficiency and effectiveness as an organization.
All right, thank you, Director. Continuing down my first time speakers list, I have Trustee Nash, then Trustee Jenkins. Trustee Nash.
Yes, and thank you. And through you, Chair, I am the OCD trustee that's been, I sat last year on the OCNet, and I was very pleased to, again, this year. At the last year's meeting, which coincided with the June graduation, in one of the hallways, you had pictures of all of the students who were graduating that year. And so I nicely walked along, and I have to tell you, I made a conscious effort to look where the students came from, all the things we spoke about, diversity, and certainly saw that they came through across our district, not necessarily where you would think, and also that they represented all of our students. And then I read their heartfelt stories in each one of their cards. And so I perhaps at some point you may want to think of inviting some students who have benefited from this program. And I think they will be better ambassadors to this program. So I certainly think this is a very wild initiative, and I would certainly encourage my trustees to think of participating in the OCNet experience. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Trustee Nash. Trustee Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I certainly have heard the concerns about the equity part of the equation, but, and actually I'll give credit to Trustee Dixon, you know, we can't put value, put a dollar value to the cultural experience of this. And, you know, this is a program where a student can come to Canada or you know, go to another country in an environment that is organized, you know, education-wise, these cultural experiences, and they're being in a home where, you know, they're safe. These opportunities may not come to even someone who can afford to send their child on their own. You know, this is an organized experience that will broaden these students and perhaps change their pathway forward. They may think differently about their post-secondary opportunities. They may take a semester in, my nephew did a couple different semesters in Europe, and that changed his perspective on life forever. And I think we need to open our doors and our eyes to opportunities that, you know, globally, we need to be thinking globally now. We can, and these programs offer that opportunity to think outside of our four little walls. So I'm in favor of this program, and I appreciate your enthusiasm, but I do agree the cost factor is a concern, and we, you know, if someone wants to participate, you know, I really hope that you know, you do everything possible to ensure that that student has the opportunity to go.
Great, thank you, Trustee Jenkins. I'm going on to my second time speakers list, so Trustee Dixon.
Through you, Chair. How are we intentionally working to attract all students and to remove the economic and social barriers to participants?
Through you, Chair. So large questions. I think it's really helpful to give you an example of some work we're endeavoring to do right now. So you would have seen tonight in the presentation that there is a new relationship that we're forging with a school district in Italy. And in a bit of a different approach was taken whereby a specific school in our district was selected, that is Brookfield High School, and a specific high school was selected in the city of Bologna. And the power of that is that it is a high school where students and staff are going to come together to build a project where staff within each school can be connecting virtually on different projects, and we are working on some global projects. And then should students wish to have that exchange opportunity, there's going to be different years that they can do so. And there are different fundraising mechanisms that will remove all barriers for the students that wish to participate. They're eligible to do so. So that's a bit of a different approach that we are taking, where we're going deep in a partnership school to school, which allows staff to build those relationships together. So hopefully that will be a model moving forward, because I know in some of the other cases where they're going sort of for a region area, it's hard to get to know and have those deeper connections, which I think are really going to have a long-lasting impact.
And I guess, so this is about our students.
Trustee Dixon, I think there was additional comments before you continue.
I was just going to mention, in terms of equity of access to the world, I think we have the opportunity to now connect digitally. And during COVID, we did quite a few at the elementary level. The elementary students in grade 5 or 6, they're not going to travel, but they had a chance to travel virtually. And I had the pleasure of watching 30 students, 60 altogether, 30 on each side, speak for 1 minute from their homes and introduce something of something that they like to do, something cultural, and they each had a minute, and the teachers did a wonderful job keeping them on track. So it was 1 minute, next one, 1 minute, next one. And we all learned so much just from seeing the space where they were, that they have so much of the same stuff that we did. Oh, I didn't know you had that. Oh, you have that. It may sound very like a small 1 hour, but to set that all up, the teacher had to be digitally fluent. The kids had to be on their laptops at home. Everyone had to do all of that. So the collaboration and organization required to do that was something else. And this teacher pulled it off without any problems. And I would love to see every school, every classroom have some touch with the outside world. Talk to students who are not in their country because they have a very different perspective. And the travel part may not be possible for everybody, not now in their life, but maybe later in their life. But right now it is possible for us to connect globally, virtually. And I think it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to do that and how to get people to find the time to do it, actually.
Great, thank you. Trustee Dixon?
Okay, so since the world's changed, so we're not like, it's past 2015 now, right? Like, I know we're looking at abroad, and when we speak about abroad, like we're just looking at Europe. Have we really looked into going into Africa and into like other South America so the kids can get a better understanding even virtually? Do you know what I mean?
All of those countries are possible. Not a problem to do that virtually. We've done work with teachers from Nigeria. We've been looking at Africa and Morocco. But yes, we want to have all the continents, maybe not all the continents, but Africa, Asia, and South America.
Through you, Madam Chair, Trustee Dixon is spot on. We're trying to diversify where we're connecting in deep partnerships. So that's not all Asia, not all Europe, absolutely. And it's interesting you mentioned both South America and Africa. We're exploring those options to try and spread it. We won't cover the whole globe. We can't have, 148 different partnerships, but we can do our best to diversify in exactly in the spirit of what you're suggesting.
Is that everything, Trustee Dixon?
Yes, sure, through you.
All right, thank
Thanks.
you, Trustee Dixon. Trustee Kaplan-Meier.
Thank you. This is just a sort of little nitpicky thing, but you mentioned Fulbright scholarships, and I'm a Fulbright scholar, and I know that you can't apply for a Fulbright scholarship without quite a bit of ability to write essays and apply for things. So I'm coming back around to the question of equity. I'm not even sure, looking at what Fulbright Canada has in relationship to the United States, it looks like maybe they have some students from Boston who come to schools here, but that's not, okay. So I guess, it's as admirable as it is to have students who are traveling back and forth. I'm not hearing that there's adequate bursary and support for students who would be coming from families where they don't already have privilege to be able to apply to go on these exchanges. For sure, virtual opportunities are excellent, but I'm not sure that that a virtual exchange is really what mostly this is about. It sounds like it's mostly whether or not students from abroad can spend $30,000 to come here, and whether or not students from here have the resources to put together applications to get support to go elsewhere.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair, again, appreciate Trustee Kaplan-Meier's comments. It's not unlike, the range of opportunities that our students look to access. And that is even a discussion around post-secondary access and how students prepare and put applications. It's part of the learning experience for us as an organization. No question, it's part of the experience for our students. We'll continue to look, as the Superintendent Hannah and Executive Director Best have mentioned, at opportunities to try and level that playing field for the greatest equity that we possibly can as we move forward. These are all very valid points, no question. And for students who are interested, there are a number of students for whom an international exchange, virtual or in person, just isn't what they're aspiring to, and that's fine as well.
Trustee Kaplan-Meier, to confirm.
I'm good.
Thank you. So we're going on to third time speaker, Trustee Lara.
Thanks. To be clear, I think a virtual program where 30 students meet 30 other students in another country is excellent. I think that is accessible to all of our schools. I think that is culturally enriching in a valuable way. I don't have a concern with that. The concern that I have is with what I'm going to call trips, because you said 5 weeks was one of the longer programs, then talked about a program that might have been 8 or 9 school days. That's a vacation. That's a school trip. I have parents who pull their kids out for 2 weeks to take them on vacation to Hawaii. And like, I don't think that's super culturally enriching. It may be for that family, but that's not a core curriculum component of education in Ontario. I did a quick bit of looking it up. 33,000 Canadian is 168,000 yuan, which puts somebody who's sending their kid in the top 4% of earners in China, assuming they're spending 100% of their money on sending their kid to Canada. And like, I can't imagine that we're getting people who are spending 100% of their salary sending their kids to Canada. And so I can't imagine we're getting anybody less than the top couple percentage of wealthiest families who participate in this program coming in. I don't know how diverse an experience we're going to get when it comes to like those kids coming to Canada and getting a nuanced understanding of the culture and the issues that exist in the other countries when they come from the wealthiest families. So I appreciate the goals of this program are cultural engagement, and I appreciate that you want to see kids engage with other cultures. I get that. My concern is really that it doesn't seem like we are successfully engaging students from low-income communities. And I know that we're not making any decisions tonight, so we're not going to change anything today. But I really don't see how we solve that fundamental discrepancy between the values that we espouse and the goals that we set for ourselves about equity and about making sure that everybody has a real shot, with asking people to fundraise $3,000 when they can't afford bread. And they can't go ask their parents, they can't ask their parents to ask their coworkers because their coworkers are all equally broke. And so, yeah, I heard a couple of my colleagues say that we can't put a price on culturally enriching. We did. It's a couple $1,000s. That's all. Thanks.
So through you, Madam Chair, a couple of comments. One, I want to be very clear and respectful. You know, these are not vacations from staff's perspective. These are very carefully thought out opportunities to experience when students are abroad, whether it's a day in the life of the educational setting, in the culture that they're attending, the visits that they have, whether it's historical, it might be climate related, a whole series of very carefully planned activities. I understand it's an opportunity anew for students to experience something new, but they are really truly thought through educational experiences. I also appreciate that all of our discussion this evening is relative. Even quite frankly, a visit to a local museum has a cost. Whether that's the entrance admission to the NAC for something, or the bus that takes students to and from that activity. So I do appreciate and don't want to ever neglect the fact that the struggles of our families to afford everything from food to the experiences they gain is always a factor on our minds, whether that's considered in a local or a global context. So really do, again, appreciate the comments made. It'll continue to be work that we strive to minimize costs wherever possible. I credit staff through OCNet and the board for doing this tremendously well. We've got a number of educators who are seasoned at these types of international exchanges and really do their best to minimize the cost and provide an incredibly enriching experience for our students, as we strive to do, frankly, for all the programs and services we offer at the elementary and secondary level. But points well raised. It's always going to be a work in progress for us.
All right, I see no other speakers to this item, so thank you very, very much, staff, for coming and presenting the report and for all your hard work on OCNet. We're now going to be going to matters for information, and I am going to call upon Trustee Scott or Jenkins to provide an OPSPA report if available.
I don't have any OPSPA report.
I have nothing to add.
All right, thank you. Trustee Scott and Jenkins, are there any questions for our OPSPA representatives? Seeing none, I'm going to call upon Trustee Lyra to present an OSTA report if available.
Thanks. So OSTA met at our meeting in December and discovered that there would be an in-year deficit of $4.6 million because of when the City of Ottawa was planning to eliminate its youth pass. So the youth pass right now costs, the district currently buys all of our bus passes for OSTA at the price set by the city. We don't get a bulk discount. We don't get any sort of consideration when they change their times to have it aligned with the school board funding time cycles. Right now, school board's funding is based on the school calendar year, and it is OC Transpo's intention to increase their prices at the beginning of January, which would have left us with a hole in year of $4.6 million. If City Council decides to go the route that they have indicated coming out of Transit Commission, that they are going to raise the price come January 1st, come hell or high water, then they will, that will leave the districts having to fill this $4.6 million hole out of the general operating fund from to pay to OSTA, because OSTA is a subsidiary of both us and the Catholic Board. Usually we split things with the Catholic Board 60-ish, 40-ish, depends on the thing, which would mean that we'd be out about 60% of $4.6 million. We will find out tomorrow what City Council is going to do with regards to this, as that's when they're deciding their budget. Some of you may have seen the news article. The general manager of OSTA has tried a number of times to get meetings with the city and to let them know about how this will impact us, to no avail yet. The ministry has been contacted and made no firm commitments with regards to in-year gap funding to make sure that we would be, like OSTA would be solvent through the year. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you very much, Trustee Lyra. We are going to start a speakers list for those of you who may want to speak, but at this time, I do need to call a 1-minute recess. I'm going to have to declare a potential conflict of interest relating to my employment at OC Transpo, and to ensure that the discussion is fruitful, I'm going to recuse myself from chair. So we're going to call a 1-minute recess. If we can have a volunteer to take over chair, that would be appreciated, and we will be back in 1 minute. Thank you.
All right, so let's resume. Okay. Amanda, I think we have you as the first speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. This is more a question to senior staff. At our most recent advocacy meeting, I had asked if it would be possible for the district to engage the chair of the Transit Commission, the mayor, and management within OC Transpo themselves for a meeting. I'm just wondering if we have done so and what the status update, if any, would be.
Through you, Madam Chair, thanks for the question. Trustee Presley's the points are well raised. Staff has reached out. We're awaiting additional feedback. We've also had communication with the Ministry of Education on this particular dynamic, to the point that Trustee Lyra made, that the ministry doesn't consider in-year changes of that nature to other parameters of expense to be the way they fund it. They would address it the following year. So we do have a gap of a number of months. So yes and yes on both fronts, not only the city officials, but the Ministry of Education.
Thank you very much, Director. That's all, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And Jennifer, Trustee Jenkins, we have.
Thank you, Chair. Just two separate questions. There was quite a few families in the Riverside South area that whose students go to Canterbury High School, and there seems to be quite a big challenge. And these kids are facing long bus rides in the morning, over an hour and a half just to get to school in the morning. So I just wanted to raise awareness of that we need to continue to ensure that all students have some sort of way to get to school and not spend their entire day on the bus. But separately, this morning, Asta put out on social media announcement for weather. And, but they mentioned both the French and the English board. They mentioned all the boards. So is that their normal standard practice where they're speaking to all the boards, whether the buses are canceled? Because a lot of parents were writing in confused by the post.
Do you want to answer that? Go ahead.
So the issue around Canterbury's come up a number of times. One of the things to consider is that Canterbury is a specialized program. And even if we were to send a yellow to some of the further edges of the Ottawa area, those neighborhoods would still be 75 minutes in a car ride. And so 90 minutes on a bus is a little bit long, but you sort of are caught by distance, and there's not much we can do about that. So it was discussed at Asta. We do remain committed to ensuring that students get transportation access to school. Unfortunately, that is going to sometimes involve 90 minutes on the bus. As an aside, we can have a conversation as a board about whether or not Canterbury should maintain its current location if we're sending so many kids on OC Transpo, given the inaccessibility of Canterbury's site by OC Transpo, but that's a conversation as a district for another time. To your point about the Asta weather updates, I don't have the answer to that. Director, do you have the answer to that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I apologize. I wasn't aware of the confusion on that front. I'll follow up with Asta with respect to that. There are times that there are joint announcements made across all of the coterminous boards in the district, even though they're different transportation authorities. I'm just not certain why that would have been the case this morning, especially because our transportation ran. So I'll look into that. If there's anything that's concrete as a direction other than perhaps a mishap in the comms, I'll follow back with Trustee Jennings and the Board of Trustees.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Are there any other questions on this item? All right. So seeing none, I'll move on to new business. Is there any new business? I have one new business thing. Trustee Presley, can I pass the chair to you?
Please go ahead, Trustee.
If we finish the item that for which the vice chair had a conflict, then she could return to the chair now.
She said, oh, there she is. Perfect.
All right. Playing past the chair tonight. So, okay, sorry, Trustee Kappelmarth, please go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. This is just it's a question to the district and also to you as my colleagues. Just my question has to do with Durham County and Limestone District School Board have both officially left Twitter or X because they feel that it is not a social media platform that they should be engaging with community on. So my question is whether OCDSB would consider doing the same. I think, in fact, one of the Asta Bus things was on Twitter or X this morning. So, but it's certainly a moment in time in which we could consider moving on for all the reasons that so many people have left. So is that something that we would consider as a district?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So a couple things to note. One is, first, it's really an operational question. It's not something that the board would make a decision on, but with that in mind, I'm happy to answer the question from an informational point of view, which is to say that the way that we use X now is simply as an announcement notification tool, because the reality is a lot of our audience, including parents and families, still get their information on X. We do not use it as a platform to engage with our audience through comments and so forth. We only use it as a platform to make announcements. And that is similar to several other districts which have taken that kind of similar approach, recognizing the value as a tool to put information out into the world, but not to necessarily engage in conversation. Our general manager of communications is here, so I'll turn it to her for a second in case she has anything further to add in that regard.
Through you, Chair. So I will add that because of the changes that X made in 2023, if you do not have an account, we can't monitor the accounts. We can't see anything that's being said about the district, that sort of thing. That's one of the reasons that we've maintained it. We've been actively disengaging since September 2023. As Executive Officer has mentioned, comments were turned off well over a year and a half ago as well. So part of the problem is you leave the platform, you lose visibility on what is being said. But again, we don't use it actively.
Thank you. Through you, I acknowledge that that is true, but I think what some other districts are doing is you don't shut down the account so that nobody else can claim the OCDSB account, but you don't engage. Sorry, I shouldn't say the word engage. You've said we don't engage. That's fine. That means that we're not responding to people, but it's actually not necessary at this time for us to be using that platform, which violates most of our policies and our beliefs in terms of how other people are treated on that platform. So by continuing to post, even if all that we're posting is benign information about meetings or about school cancellations, we are effectively supporting X.
Great, thank you, Trustee Kaplan-Meier. Trustee Lara, for new business.
Thanks. So building on what was just said, but what was inferred but not directly said, X has become the playground of Nazi ideology, very hateful ideology. Many companies, many large organizations, including districts around the province, are choosing to leave because it no longer supports the values that the organization upholds. And so I would argue at some point, the continued engagement on a site like that becomes a political decision, and that we as the board are responsible for making political decisions. And so I hear what Executive Officer Mark has said about how this is an operational decision. Respectfully, I think I would disagree because of the inherently political content that exists, or the inherently political nature of the platform. That's all. Thanks.
All right, looking around the room, I am seeing no response from staff and no other new business. So I now declare this meeting adjourned. Have a great night, everyone.